I came into the organization, it was being run by someone who was extremely hierarchical. Extremely hierarchical. I said, you know, this is before I knew anything about Circle and that sort of thing, but as I came to know more about this, and I started to say, would you work with me on this and try this with me? I had to, even as the CEO, I had to say, will you come along? Will you try something with me? Because if I tried this, it wouldn't work. Because I would have been trying to control it. Never happens. Living systems aren't controllable. That's mostly about control. Again, the police department and the fire department, when I was at the CMA, one of our companies was COTS, the Centralized Trauma System, so I had a lot of conversations with police and fire people. They would even chafe at me and say, no, Phil, not anymore. We used to think that's how we're organized. We now know this is how we're organized. So even police and fire have been doing things, and Margaret Wheatley, who's been one of the people that several of us have done a lot of learning from, has worked with the Army a lot. And they also have moved away from thinking that it's that to understanding it's this, because if I'm a private first class in the field and I do something, I can create an international incident for President Obama. They've learned that. And so they've had processes and procedures. They call them after-action reviews, after-action circles. They do all kinds of things to help to support the natural living system. While, yes, there needs to be directive, we only want one person that has the keys to the big one. But the truth is, there's people that got keys to the big one all over the place down here that could put that person in a situation of having to make decisions about the big one. Together we're different than we are alone. This network behaves together differently than if you could isolate one node on the network. So we'll often say, again, in organizations, I know Jim, but man, when Jim was with these 5 people, I didn't feel like I didn't even know who Jim was. Pretty much true. Because Jim, by himself, is different than when he's in the network. So we can't assume that just because we think we know Jim, that's his only nature. He has another set of principles that are operating when we're in with other people. It's capable of self-organizing. Now, I think there's parameters to that. We've experienced that. A crisis happens, Katrina happens, and the system starts to self-organize itself faster than FEMA can respond. People will start saving each other. People will, I've got to get that person out. The natural system, living system will start to work. And then FEMA will kick in, which is more organized this way, and start to do things to be helped. However, for things over the long haul, Tuesday and I were part of helping to organize the community of practice in this community of people who've been through the art hosting training. And at first, we were kind of like, well, it's self-organizing. It doesn't need us to bring some organization to it. Let's see what emerges. And it went, it needed some center to it. And so Tuesday and I and another of our colleagues, Deb Helber, decided, okay, fine, we'll step in. And we'll at least be the organizing principle around calling it and that sort of thing. So, it's capable of self-organizing? Absolutely. There are times, well, not times, in your organization, I guarantee you, there are triangles, and it can be more than 3 people, that have already self-organized themselves. I give the example, again, when I was in the Medical Association. I always tried to pay attention to what were the informal or natural hierarchies that evolved in the organization. And I knew that my assistant Kelly was close friends with Lisa, who was close friends with another person, and they weren't in the same department, but they aligned. If you ever ask the three of them to get something done, get out of the way, because their natural alliance with each other was more powerful than had they been aligned that way. So paying attention in living systems to what are the natural hierarchies, the natural kinds of leadership groups that come together can be very helpful, because they will self-organize that way. You do it too. You're closer to this person than that person. It's just natural. And there's others, these are in your book too. Nature seeks diversity. Nature seeks diversity. When diversity is not present, systems die. So whether it's a forest, if the forest is all the same trees, eventually it'll die out. If there's the same height and canopy and not something lower and not, it will die out. So when we talk about diversity, we talk about more diversity in our workplace. I am one that is an advocate not only because it's the right thing to do, it's essential to do for an organization to be healthy. It must have diversity. So if you look around and it isn't there, and you're in a leadership role, invite it in. It's vital to the health of the organization that diversity be present. So these are some of the policies and procedures that nature has evolved around living systems. Why do we teach this to you? Because what we're going to be talking about, the circle, the World Cafe, the open space, the check-in, check-out, tend to be practices that help the natural living system to work well. So we want you to understand that we're doing this because the system's living, a circle's living. A circle is a non-intrusive way of bringing some organization to a living system to allow it to work its best. I never went about trying to reorganize. We stayed this way on paper, but we functioned this way. I just always figured it would take me all 13 years to explain that to everybody. And it wasn't worth the time. It was better to just spend it practicing this way. This tends to be mechanistic. That's organic. Again, I'm not trying to say I've run these organizations. I know how it, I know what that is. It's not that it's bad, but you can't forget that that's going on. This tends to be management by control. This tends to be management by trust. And I don't mean by trust in the sense of I just trust you. But I trust human beings. And I trust that as a living human being, 99% of you, if I trust the human being, this will show up. There'll be 1% that's been so damaged and so hurt that it doesn't work. But it may not be, it's not that I'm saying I trust you, I'm trusting this. These tend